The world is burning and the governing parties, they can only do one thing. And Mr. Hedler from Die Welt summed it up perfectly. Let's listen to him for a moment.
The federal government's quarrels persist, with the Black-Red coalition resembling a rerun of the Traffic Light coalition. The dispute between Finance Minister Klingbeil and Economic Affairs Minister Reiche is escalating.
Yes, Katharina Reiche, all she has to do at this point is breathe. She's an absolute thorn in Lars Klingbeil's side. If you want to support this channel, I would be incredibly happy about a like and a subscription. It costs you nothing and means so much to me. So all this stress and conflict is escalating. By the way, what we should make of this argument, I'd like to briefly refer to yesterday's Bundestag session. It was said there that the high fuel and energy costs are solely the fault of the AfD. The message from the SPD was that they can't do anything about it. Why should they fix the whole thing now? But listen for yourselves.
The Federal Minister of Finance accuses the Minister of Economic Affairs of slowing down the energy transition. Especially the war in the Gulf shows how important independence is.
Our power grid is so independent that interventions have to be made constantly on weekends, and we have to pay other countries to take our electricity. That's how independent we are. For example, if other countries didn't take our electricity, the lights would go out here. Yes, electricity is that complex. And Katharina Reiche is now calling for more gas power plants to be built, among other things, or at least to get a clear energy roadmap. But the SPD really doesn't like that because Lars Klingbeil doesn't want it. He wants to have a lot more solar panels out there and wind turbines that can be subsidized. For electricity that on those days when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing, we don't even need anymore. Yes, I really have to say it like this, we can't store it because yes, storage capacities just aren't there at all.
Klingbeil is in the driver's seat. Whether projects die or go through depends on his financial approval. The coalition agreement states that the energy transition will continue to be pushed forward, but Reiche wants to save money and is going after things that are sacrosanct to the Social Democrats.
Yes, exactly, and especially today, you can check everywhere Dobrindt has already thrown a wrench in his plans. He sat down seriously with the poor Chancellor and said, "Well, friends, things are a bit tight for me. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. I just need 65,000 euros a month now. Otherwise, I can't cover my expenses anymore with my private jet and things like that." And Dobrindt already said, "Hey, we want to save money. Right now, it's not really the time to increase things unexpectedly." Yeah, to a 65,000 euro salary. And Reiche is also trying to save now. What about Klingbeil? Of course, he agrees, yeah, tax the rich. We don't need anything else. Well, unless, of course, yeah, Lars Klingbeil now gives Reiche a total brush off because they're supposed to save. That's exactly how it is in Germany, just trying to make it sound a bit funny.
But is there a conflict with the finance minister?
So count the R's at the end, very, very important. And I have to interrupt this for a moment. I'll just make a quick cut, okay? And then you can keep counting right away and write below how many R's you heard.
So, yes, the good news is that we're at the point with the legislative work for our department that we're in the early coordination phase.
That's exactly the perfect answer to the question we want to hear.
And I'm optimistic that the Ministry of Finance will review the laws and that we can then move forward together.
So, did you figure out how much it was? Write it down below. Let's see who gets the right amount. Anyway, that's a confident answer. It definitely looks different when you're asked like, hey, are you having trouble with anyone? Either you say, no, I'm not. Or you say, look, we've been able to come to an agreement. I'll just show that real quick.
The reform of renewables, which includes cuts to solar subsidies for private individuals, grid expansion instead of wasting electricity. Wind turbine operators are supposed to help finance the grids, otherwise they have to forego compensation if production has to be curtailed due to overproduction. Reiche wants gas power plants, but the SPD is demanding more battery storage for wind and solar. Overhead lines versus underground cables.
Yes, we were able to agree on all these topics. We're saving quite a bit now. And, well, I convinced him that it's better to use underground cables, especially after what happened in Berlin with your buddies. You remember, dear Lars, yes, where there was an attack on the infrastructure and afterwards thousands of stops were paralyzed, your Antifa buddies. You remember, right? It would have been a confident answer if everyone had known. Man, okay, they're on track, but with that, hey, I actually wanted to cut it out at first. Yeah. And then I thought to myself, like, my goodness, you can't possibly do that many cuts in 30 seconds. That was definitely not a confident answer. They were really at each other's throats. So, dear CDU, I know many of you watch my videos. Please just break with the SPD, become a minority government, and look for shifting majorities. That would be perfect. So you don't end up running the entire CDU into the ground.
When you look at the concept of the federal government as a whole, it's actually surprising because actually they wanted to relieve these income groups. And it would somehow fit with this federal government that in the future, instead of providing relief, they would just take it right back out of your other pocket before you even get it.
Yeah, it's clever. It's really clever, isn't it, to do it exactly like that? Just imagine if they had to pay for that out of their own pocket from the $500 million that comes in every month because of the fuel prices. But Peter Tauber is back, the former CDU Secretary General. Some of you might still remember him. You know, back then he said, like, by the end of the year, guys, you won't get the budget passed in the regular way. We now know that it was financed unconstitutionally with debt. Back then, I also made a video about it saying, you know, new elections and so on, because the budget couldn't be passed. He has spoken up again now, and back then he demanded that the firewall be taken down. Yeah, and he wrote something that should actually worry everyone here in Germany. I have to show it to you again in a moment. However, I have to say Peter Tauber is one of the last reasonable voices. He's a historian, he's a lieutenant general, so he really had something to say in the CDU, and he was always very pragmatic, and that's showing now too.
Peter Tauber is now finally calling on his Christian Democrats to be realistic. The consolation, 1,000 euros ordered by a government that doesn't pay, that's not brave, that's brazen. He then called for more realism, because all these companies are under massive pressure. They can't afford it due to the economic situation.
By the way, he already said something in August, you might remember, during the whole budget debate. If you don't open up to the AfD now, then at some point you'll disappear into obscurity like other Christian parties. If you don't look for votes everywhere now and promote a parliamentary process, later you'll be the ones left behind, eventually even behind the SPD. Yes, fine. However, what he couldn't have known yet is that the left has already overtaken the SPD and the SPD is massively losing to the left. So yes, it can always get tougher, and these people, the hardcore of the SPD, just can't be led any further because the SPD simply doesn't have any clear direction anymore. By the way, in all the polls now, in all the polls from YouGov to Allensbach, Forza, Infratest, INSA, all of them, did I forget one? Forschungsgruppe Wein. Is the AfD now the strongest party in Germany, between 1 and 6% ahead? I'll likely make another video about that this weekend. Speaking of weekend videos, I'll tell you in advance, on Sunday there will be a few old videos from me that I recorded a while ago and will show you why. It's my birthday then, so please understand that I'll just stay in bed and sleep on Sunday.
I see the criticism, I don't share it, and once again, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. It's an offer from us to give businesses and employees some relief in a difficult time. It's an offer, nothing more.
The businesses have gratefully declined to pay because, in fact, for many, it's simply not possible. And the discontent continues to grow here in Germany. I hope you'll be out on the streets on May 16th while all of Europe is taking to the streets to demonstrate. If you already have demonstrations planned, feel free to send them to me by email. I would be very interested in that. And dear Mr. Merz, do you really think that I might have to work on Sundays? But I've always worked 7 days a week anyway. No, on Sundays there are old videos of mine that I have never broadcasted. So please forgive me if some of them are 4 or 5 months old. I wish you a wonderful evening. Make something out of it, fire up the grill and really smoke out your neighbors, especially if your neighbors are Greens.